Hey, it's everybody. Welcome to episode 58 of the Former Action Guys podcast, and I'm your host, Justin Cramer. And today's Father's Day, so I'm having my, this will be out on Monday, but yesterday was Father's Day. And so I had my dad on, Sergeant First Class Stanley Cramer Jr., talk about his time. He came in 1974 into the Army at the tail end of the Vietnam War, so he missed that. Got sent to Germany. Talk about his experiences there, what he did. He got out, went into the reserves, and then he also was in the Gulf War. Or he was in the Gulf War, so we discussed his time in the Gulf War with the 377th Combat Support Hospital and the different things that they did. And then we kind of get into, sounds like we're going to end it, and then we keep going for a while. So we just kind of keep talking about some different things, leadership and stuff like that. But overall, it was an interesting episode. We talked about my grandfather and stuff a little bit too, which was cool, just because I just, that history, some of the stuff I don't know, and I don't think we ever sat down and just had a discussion about it. So not only do I hope this is entertaining for you and gives you a little bit of my background, but it hopefully tells you or causes you to contact your parents and sit down and have a conversation about your history, your family history, because, once they're gone and it's over, and then once you're gone, it's over. Who knows about your family and the legacy? So, and maybe get it recorded, something like this, sit down and record it. That way it's kept forever or something like that. That way, the history is there and someone's actually speaking about it and talking about it. Just food for thought. Anyway, so welcome to the episode and enjoy. All right, let's do this. Pops, you ready? You ready for the Former Action Guys podcast?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Welcome to the show, man. Happy Father's Day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Father's Day too.
Yeah. So this is a weird interview, right? Because normally I'm just talking to people that my friends or people that I haven't met. But obviously you're my dad, so it's a little different. But we'll do what we normally do and start from the beginning, I guess. I know. Actually, I'd like you to talk about, so for people that don't know, my grandfather on your side was in the Air Force, the Army Air Corps, before it was the Air Force. So if you want to talk about kind of what maybe he did in the military and stuff like that, kind of, a little bit of the family history so people understand, I guess our background.
Okay, so I'll go back before his father, because his father worked on the railroad when it was owned by the government.
Okay.
So he was also a government employee, and my father went into the Air Force, Army Air Corps, and so when they decided, I didn't know this until later on, probably about a week before he had died, that he was at the Berlin Wall, at Checkpoint Charlie. I didn't know that he was assigned to that location.
Mm-hmm.
But when the Army Air Corps split up, he had a choice to go to the Army or to the Air Corps, so he chose the Air Corps. So he spent 23 years in the Air Force, and he retired as an E8, and his job in the Air Force was logistics.
Okay. Yeah, I remember, I thought it was cool. Last time I was home, you gave me a bunch of that photo book of the photos in Japan. So he was part of the occupation in Japan right after World War II, correct? So did he join at the very end of World War II then?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe he was over there right now. I'm still, we're still waiting to pass those photos out. But there was a lot of photos. They were the tiniest photos I've ever seen. I've never seen them that small before.
Yeah, they're like the old Kodak Brownie or something like that camera, like the little 1 inch. Yeah. But it's like the flight line and stuff of P-51s and stuff like that are there for the occupation, immediately following the war. I remember at his funeral, he had his medals were laid out and stuff like that. So he had the World War II Victory Medal. So I would assume that he was in at the end of World War II then, correct?
Yeah, so I believe he was there because I think he had the occupation also, an occupation medal.
Yeah. Okay.
Going back that far, I don't know those medals that well or those ribbons that well.
Yeah, or how you would have gotten. Did he join? Did he volunteer or did he get drafted?
Him and his, I think it was his brother-in-law or future brother-in-law. They joined together.
Oh, okay.
In Columbus, Ohio, it was called. It's actually where I was born, Lockbourne Air Force Base, right outside of Columbus, Ohio, which is now an Air Guard base, and commonly referred to as Rickenbacker.
Okay.
National Guard now.
Okay. And did he join when he was 18, right?
18 or 19, somewhere in there.
Something
I'm
like
not
that.
really
Yeah.
sure exactly.
And then as a kid, so he was in the military, his entire career until he retired, obviously. So as a kid, you moved around a lot. So where were some of the places that you guys lived while he was in the Air Force?
So we started, well, obviously, I just told you I started in Columbus, Ohio. And then we moved to Roswell, New Mexico to Walker Air Force Base. And from there, I was like 60 to 64. Then from 64 to 68, we were at Anderson Air Force Base on Guam.
Okay.
And then after that, he went to Grissom Air Force Base out between Peru and Kokomo, Indiana, and then he retired from there
Yeah.
after 3 years.
Okay. Now I remember you telling me about you growing up on Guam and stuff. What was that like? Or how old were you when you moved to Guam?
I was 8 to 12 years old.
Okay, so you were obviously older, and you probably remember a lot of Guam then.
Yes, I remember a lot. And I remember, the few things that happened there. Like a lot of people don't know about that Japanese soldier that was caught there or, that was left behind there.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually saw him one day. We were in, because my dad took us to a church off the base because he felt like we needed to get the culture. So I was at a Guamanian Baptist church, and we were going to vacation Bible school, and we were weaving baskets and hats.
Yeah, you're basket weaving. That's funny.
So there is actually a basket weaving class in Vacation Bible School on Guam.
There you
So
go.
while we were out there, all the kids were out there. I saw this soldier against the clearing over there, and I was like, it didn't really register who he was. But now that I'm an adult, I figured that at this time he probably was, coming to the churches looking for food and so on and so forth.
What year was this? Do you know?
It's probably around 67, maybe. But he
So
was found. He came back to Japan about 75, 74, 75. I don't know. He's on the internet. You can look him up.
So this dude had
He's,
been living in the woods for 20 years in
he,
the Guam jungles, Guamanian jungles.
he lived in a cave, and
Oh,
there's a
okay.
place. There's a place now that the Japanese come to. It's like a tourist location to view where his cave's at. And one of the big attractions on Guam is called Talafofo Falls. And when I remember us walking back there when we were kids, and as we were walking back there, there was overturned tanks and machine gun emplacements with a bunch of old rusted out beer cans, and
Really?
it's like there's some of the scenes that you'd see from World War II that was left over.
That's
Was
wild,
just
man.
just there, but now it's cleaned up.
So yeah, I've talked to a lot of guys I know were stationed in Okinawa because it's one of the major bases that we send Marines to. And I was always kind of bummed I never got to go. I never wanted to get stationed there, but I would have at least liked to have gone there to at least check it out, And I think one of the most interesting things that I would have been able to do is I would have been all about the battlefield like tours, because like you said, you have like the remnants of the battlefield right there in people's backyards, basically. And, you don't really have that here in the U.S. There's not like, there's certain areas, like when we grew up in Chattanooga, there was the Chickamauga battlefield that was just south of us, that kind of battlefield. But I don't know, it just doesn't seem the same as like having a machine gun pillbox, like where you and your buddies can go hang out in after school, like that's just, I don't know. So how'd you like Guam? Was it cool? I mean,
Well,
you were a kid,
as a
so
kid, it's interesting. From 8 to 12, there's a lot of things you can do in the jungle, and I was in the Boy Scouts, so one of the things that we had learned how to do, there were special forces that came there, and they taught us how to survive in the jungle for, so our task was to survive in the jungle for 3 days. We had to build our own shelter and find our own food. So we all built a shelter out of palm trees, and I ate coconuts for 3 days, which, the after effect of coconuts for 3 days equals diarrhea for 4 days.
That'll fuck your stomach up.
So it's coconut milk and coconuts, but there's a lot of other fruits that's on there. I mean, one of the things that we used to do, and it was kind of interesting, was always go to the governor's mansion. He opened it up once a year, and some of the cuisine that they had there was interesting, like fried banana peels. It sounds strange, but it was really good because it had sugar and cinnamon on it. But just some of the local cuisine that they had there. But it was really interesting to go there to the governor's mansion. So, and also there was a Navy base there. So as a Boy Scout, I also toured one of the nuclear submarines when it came into port there.
Oh, that's cool.
So there was a lot of military, but I've heard a lot of people say when you're an adult, you don't want to be stationed on Guam because it's such a small area. The other
Yeah.
thing that I didn't mention there while we were on Guam was you've heard of Bob Hope and his USO tours. So
Yeah.
we went to Bob Hope tours every year to see, and it was just a big crowded, like you see on TV. There's just so many people there, and all the
That was like
stars.
a that was like a huge deal for the longest time in the military, being able to go see a Bob Hope show.
Yes, and
That's like old school military.
yeah, and one of the stars that one of them was Raquel Welch, and she was handing out glossy black and white photos that she had signed, in her bikini.
Yeah.
So,
Good
back
stuff,
then
man.
it's so different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now
For
today
sure.
she's a lot older. So
Yeah. For sure. It's funny. I had a kid in my team. When I was at Anglico, Jordi Anoki, one of my radio operators, came. Of course, he's not from Guam. He's from one of the Micronesian islands around there. He was like,
yes.
Guam's the big island. He was
Oh.
telling me like, oh yeah, we go to Guam because it's the big island, and I'm like, Jesus, like that's a tiny ass island. But it's just funny that I don't know, the culture or the impact of the military is still there. Like there's a huge kind of like Filipinos going in the Navy. Like that's a big thing for them still, is to still serve in the U.S. military for whatever reason. Like it seems like it's like, I don't know. What was the perception? Do you remember? You were a kid, obviously, but do you remember like how the locals perceived you guys? Was there any animosity or anything like that, or was it, like not a big deal?
Well, when I went to a junior high school, and it was Daddy Doe Junior High School is what it was called, and Daddy Doe is like the second largest city there. And so when I went to the junior high school, it really didn't seem like there was a lot of animosity there. But now today, when I've read a few things about Guam, it talks about how that they feel like the U.S. military had just come over and taken their land and things like that, just moved people out of the way and not paid them back for land or whatever, because this is their sacred land and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So that's today's feeling. But back then, I didn't, there wasn't a lot of things going on like that, because I think people were more appreciative back then that because Guam was overtaken by the Japanese during World War II, as you
Yeah.
probably know.
Yeah.
And those islands are called the Marianas Islands. So
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, man. So then you guys moved from Guam, and then you said, where'd you move after that? To Anderson Air Force Base?
Grissom Air Force Base
Grissom.
between Peru
Okay.
and Kokomo, Indiana. So I went to Peru High School in Peru, Indiana.
So at what point did you think that you were going to join the military? Did you decide that was your path?
Well, the reason I joined the military is in 1973 is when I graduated high school. I couldn't really find a job from 73 to 74. There were other issues that were going on in my personal life that I needed a job. So I had met somebody, and he had talked about becoming a radar repairman, which was I wanted to. And at the time, Hawk missiles was the go-to missile at the time in 74. So I tried to get that, and obviously I had a security clearance violation, so I could only get a confidential clearance. So that's when I ended up going to be a Nike Hercules radar and computer repairman.
What was
So
your
that's the
security
path
clearance
I took.
violation?
What's that?
What was your security clearance violation?
Oh, I
haven't heard this story.
I stole a car when I was a kid at 15 years old, and I led the police on a high-speed chase through Peru, Indiana, and crashed in Lover's Lane.
I totally forgot that you told me about that. You told us
Yeah.
about that when we were younger. I
Yeah,
remember.
So my dad made me spend the night in jail, and I had to repay repay the car back that I wrecked or totaled, which was $150. And it was now today I wish I had that car, because it was like a 50 Buick Special.
Oh, really?
One of the big heavy body specials with big
My
engine.
dad-
And I was like, yeah, B8. It had some power.
My dad's a car thief. What am I
Well,
gonna do?
I was 15, I spent one night in jail, and I've never been in jail since. The only thing I've ever gotten since then was a moving violation or, parking ticket. Other than that, I think that taught me that one night.
So had you considered the military prior to that?
I never really thought about it because I thought I could get a job here or there, but there was just no jobs to be had in 74. So
Yeah.
joining the military is probably one of the best decisions I ever made, actually.
Yeah, a lot of people say that. A lot of people say that, when you're on the outside looking in, it's very, formidable. Like, oh my God, what am I doing? but it's I think a lot of people appreciate the I don't know, the training, the consistency of a paycheck, like the responsibility, you know, all that stuff that you get. Like it's I don't know, it does a lot of good for a lot of people. So real quick though, 74, so you're talking about coming in, this is the end of the Vietnam War. Like I can't imagine the military is very popular at that point.
Well, it was an all volunteer army, and your first job is always infantry, no matter what. So basic training teaches you how to be infantry.
Yeah.
And so that, and they drilled that into our heads the whole time.
What year did the draft end?
I think it ended in 72.
Okay. What was that like? Like when you found out, like, oh shit, I'm not going to get drafted, like the draft's over.
I was in high school and I never really thought about being drafted, because I wasn't 18. And even when I graduated, I wasn't 18. I was only 17 when I graduated high school. So.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Well, I never really thought about it. Until...
What a weird, man. That, I mean, for the guys that were, mid 60s, well, I mean, all the way from World War II, but, all the way into the Vietnam era, into the mid 60s, late 60s, getting drafted, that had to have been like a weird, just kind of a stress on your back that you're just waiting for that letter to arrive that says you have to go down to the fucking, or down to the, excuse me, Dad, I'll try to limit the F-bombs.
Yeah, please.
But to get you down to the local draft office and do your thing, like that would have just been interesting. So, knowing when you were coming in, was it known that the war was winding down? Like it was like, hey, this is okay. So there was still no end in sight when you decided to join.
No, because it didn't end until 75, the following year.
Yeah.
But
okay,
I went to AIT for 39 weeks.
Oh, really? 39 weeks.
Yes, after I got out of basic training at Fort Jackson, and I came in March of 74, and so I went to Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama for 39 weeks for the radar and computer repair class, and there was 4 U.S. soldiers and 4 Italian Army officers.
Oh, okay.
So that's what our class consisted of.
Oh, really? That's a pretty small class to be together for that long, too.
Well, I mean, there's a lot in this class here. 39 weeks, obviously, you're going to go across a lot of different things. And, at the time, the part of the radar was classified that I'd have to explain the radar to you pretty quickly. It's pretty easily, really. You see the acquisition radar that you see on TV that goes round and round.
Yeah.
And you have a target tracking radar, a missile tracking radar, and a target ranging radar. Mm-hmm. So all this information is fed into the computer once the missile is fired. And it can be adjusted in flight. And so the part of the system that was classified at the time was that there was a component in their chassis that oscillated the frequency where it could not be jammed. So once the missile was launched, then that was it. It's on target. It cannot be jammed, and it's gone. And you can adjust it in flight. That's what the computer did.
Yeah.
So now you can see these things I actually saw it on Mysteries of the Abandoned by Gary, Indiana. I've also seen it on the History Channel. So the only actual active radar site, I believe, is in the New Mexico National Guard at White Sands, New Mexico.
And they're using that same kind of radar system?
They're just using it, as a model to show people what it was and what it did.
Oh, okay.
And things like that. I believe it's more like a historical thing.
So you didn't get the job you wanted, but you got something kind of similar, I guess. Were you happy with what you got?
They said that's the next thing that I could get. And I'm like, okay, I'm still going to be going to Redstone Arsenal. I'm still going to get to electronics because, my long-term goal at the time was to become an electrical engineer, which didn't happen, obviously, but
yeah.
At the time, I thought that might be the path that I wanted, but it was a lot more difficult than I expected.
Yeah, no, for sure. That would have been a weird time to be an electrical engineer too, because of all the computers all coming to age at that time. Like everything's like really starting to come together. And then if you would have done, man, into the 80s would have been wild. Anyway,
the size of that computer that that you see as an iPhone or a calculator, it was as big as the trailer is now.
Yeah, yeah. What did Grandpa Cramer think about you joining the Army rather than the Air Force or the Air? I mean, I guess he didn't really care. I guess he joined the Army too.
Yeah, I think he was okay with it. He was glad, I think, that I joined the military, and so I think everybody concerned was happy that I joined the military,
Yeah.
except for
Okay.
me when I got to Germany, of course.
Yeah. So when you're getting to the end of your course, your MOS school, at what point did you find out where you're going to be stationed? Did you think there was a chance you could still go to Vietnam?
No, because I knew the war was winding down then. Because in the difference between basic training and AIT, in basic training we got nothing, no news, nothing, only what the drill sergeant relayed to us.
Yeah.
In AIT, I lived out on the economy. So I my first child was born while I was there at Redstone Arsenal. Eric, your half brother, your older
Yeah.
half brother. But anyway, so towards the end of the course, we all got orders and to go to Germany. So my classmate, one classmate who was an E4, who was in charge of us, who was a real dick. I'll say that because we were all privates and he just liked bossing us around. But he went somewhere, I think to Fort Hood or somewhere down there in Texas. And another guy and I both went to Germany. And we got there, we went to a castle. It's a 21st Replacement Battalion. So you got to this castle in Germany in Frankfurt, and you just sat and wait for 3 days until they decide where to farm you out at. So he went to Stuttgart and I went to Wackenheim, as you saw on my little thing I sent to you.
I actually didn't read it. I'm
Well, if you look on the front, it's just like 25 years ago. That's a picture of about 45 years ago, actually. When I was
yeah.
like 19.
I
And,
remember the photo. That's the same photo, or is that document you sent me from your retirement?
yeah, that's the same one. It's when I was in
Yeah.
my the khakis. They had the khakis back then.
Yeah, you're on like guard duty or something.
Yeah, an extra duty. There was
Yeah.
always extra duty when you're E4 and below. You know that.
Oh yeah, fire watch. That's what we call it. Fire watch, where you just walk circles around the barracks.
Well, that was in basic training, but there we was actually letting people on post with, if they had the sticker and saluting officers as they come by. That's all we did, really.
Oh,
It
so
didn't
you were a
matter.
gate
We
guard.
had no weapon or nothing. We had no baton. We had nothing except the
Oh yeah.
little silk, whatever you call those little scarf things.
Yeah, that's funny.
Ascot.
We
That's what
actually
we-
still Marines don't do just fire watch in boot camp. When you're in the fleet, when you get to your unit, one of the first things you'll probably do is fire watch at your barracks at least once or twice
yeah.
a month or more. Like every depending on the unit, every unit's different. There's at least one NCO in the barracks that's the duty NCO. Then he has his A duty NCO, which is like a lance corporal or maybe another corporal, and then you have junior Marines that walk around the barracks at the same time. And this is like every building. It's such a waste of manpower to me, in my opinion. But whatever. Anyway,
We had that too. I did that one time for one night, and I'm like, "Hey, why is the duty driver up there sleeping?" So I got me a license from that point on, and I never had to do that again. I always slept and was.
see, you gotta take advantage. You gotta see, the path and push your way towards doing something like that.
So I'll tell you, when I first got to Germany or after I got my orders to go to Wackenheim, they stick us on a train. I came from Peru, Indiana, a town of like 10,000 people, nothing.
Yeah.
And I've never been on a train my whole life. They stick me on a train. I go from Wiesbaden to Mainz. I don't even know how to get out to the public. So the first thing I do, if I finally figure out how to get out, and I start smelling all these weird smells like sausages, and there's an old man down there cooking sausages. And I look across the street, and these big red lights flash and says "Crazy Sexy." I'm like, I wonder what that is.
Hit up the red district in Germany.
Yeah, because it's legal there.
Yeah. Well,
And then some guys come along in this old Dodge van and pick me up and say, "Hey, you Cramer?" I'm like, "Yeah, get in." And so that was it.
what a weird time, man. This is before cell phones. People just assume you're going to be where you're supposed to be.
Well, people were more responsible back then because they knew what to do, and there was less things to get in trouble with. I guess I don't know.
Well, and the thing is like the expectation is like if you're supposed to be somewhere at a certain time, you're going to be there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And like now it's like, well, I could text you, like here I was 5 minutes late on our phone calls. Like, yeah, I'm going to need another 5 minutes. It's different that way. So anyway, I don't know anything about Germany, so I don't know where that base is. What's it?
Well, I'll tell you, I have said this story. So if you're floating down the Rhine, you start in Frankfurt, you go by Wiesbaden, you go by Mainz, and then you get off in Wackernheim.
Okay.
And Mainz is where Elvis Presley served in the 8th Infantry.
Oh yeah. Okay. Back in the
So I
day.
was about probably 20 kilometers from there.
Okay. What were some of the cool sights and stuff that you did in Germany in the, what was to see in Germany in the 70s?
Well, a lot of things in there. There was a lot of wine festivals, and you could go out to these wine festivals and beer festivals and buy a bottle of wine for 50 cents at
Yeah.
the time. And I spoke Spanish pretty fluently, even more than I did back then than I do now. But I could still start to understand German a little bit. So we went to a couple castles, took castle tours, and we was close to the Rhine, so we'd go down to the Rhine and have a couple of drinks and um, other things, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that was
Maybe.
basically what we did there. I mean, we didn't really have a lot to do. And one of our favorite hangouts was called the Strange Machine.
Oh yeah.
So that was a discotheque where we went to. We met girls there, and other German guys that spoke English. They all spoke English there. So,
Oh
but it was a
okay.
cool club, and they played really good music. It seemed like the music they played there hit before it even came to the States.
Huh.
So, but one of the things that happened there when I was there at Wiesbaden is the Bader Meinhof gang, which you probably never heard of them, but they're all
No.
dead now. But the Bader Meinhof gang, they bombed a discotheque in Wiesbaden and killed four airmen, I think.
You know what? I think I actually have heard of that. I think I feel like I've read about that before.
They were all journalists or something like that, and I don't know. They ended up getting in prison. They all got caught and went to prison, and but that's what happened. So that discotheque obviously came on the list and not to enter. But that was one of the places But Wiesbaden was where we'd go to different places. And the thing that we found out early on is why did we join the Army when the Air Force is sitting here getting all this great food? Because every time we go to Wiesbaden, we'd go to the Air Force Base to eat.
Yeah, for sure.
And
It's still the same way.
yeah,
It's still the same way. Like even, I mean, everywhere else we go outside of the Marine Corps, we're like, oh, look at this place. This is great. Like, don't get me wrong. There's some good chow halls in the Marine Corps.
yeah.
Bridgeport, California probably has the most underrated one. 29 Palms has a really good one. They got to have good chow out there because it's in the middle of the fucking desert. Like,
Yeah.
if not, what else are you going to do? You're going to get crazy out there. You got to have something good.
So
Um,
so what happened there? I'll tell you a little bit about our job. I was in direct support maintenance, and we had 4 outlying batteries. One was right there on the post,
mhm.
and so whichever battery was hot, then if that went down, we had to go there and be there within 2 hours to try and work on repairing the radar. Then their secondary radar site was up.
Yeah.
So it was kind of big rotation. So that's how it was for 2 years like that. You work 8 hours on, 8 hours off, and 24 hours on call.
Yeah.
So
Where
it was kind of cool.
So right now in the military, and like, or I don't know about now, but as I was getting out of the Marine Corps, you meet so many people that hadn't gone to Afghanistan or hadn't gone to Iraq, and they're just so bitter about it, or they're disappointed, or they're just like, maybe I'll get to go, because there were still a couple small deployments before I got out. What was the feeling amongst the soldiers that got sent to Germany? Were they bummed that they're not getting to go to Vietnam first, or like they're gonna miss the war or anything, or were people like, oh shit, like thank God I'm not going, like
No, it wasn't anything like that because we knew the war was winding down back then. Because I didn't go there till like March of '75, and around that time is when the Vietnam War ended, actually.
yeah.
So
So,
I think I
but
went March, April, somewhere around
but
there.
but I guess what I'm asking is like, were you disappointed you didn't get to go to Vietnam? Were other guys disappointed that they did, they joined too late to get to go?
No, I don't think that was the feeling. I just think the feeling was is that we were in the Army and we're stuck here, and how the hell do we get ourselves here, and how do we get out?
You're stuck in Germany. Like you make it sound like it's a bad thing.
Well, where we were at, it was such a small little tiny place. It was, I mean, everywhere there. I mean, there was trains, but it took you had to walk a mile to get to the train or any of the guest houses. It's like 45, 30 minutes to 25 to 30 minutes to get to a guest house to drink or eat.
Yeah.
So,
Huh.
I mean, we were in a desolate location. So,
Yeah, but you still got to go out and do stuff. I have your Pink Floyd ticket over there. It's
well, that was later on. That was after I was there 2 years. I mean, so there was some good concerts there. And I know you have that Pink Floyd concert ticket, which is in German. I paid $8 for that back then in '76, '77.
That's crazy.
That was close to when I was getting out.
Yeah, it's a for those that have, no one's seen it, I guess, except for the people that have come to my place. But it's a Pink Floyd concert ticket. It's the "Wish You Were Here" album cover, full color. Like it's a really, I've never seen a concert ticket like it. It's pretty awesome.
Do you even have it close?
Nah, I'm not gonna get up while we're doing this and grab it, but
Yeah.
maybe I'll post it up on Instagram when I talk about this. When I put this up as or when I make a post for this interview. But so, what was it like after? So you're coming to your end of your 2 years in Germany. Was it 4-year enlistments then?
I was 3 years and active and 3 years IRR, which I didn't know the IRR part. And so I went back to Indiana and I got a job here or there, and then finally I got a job at Chrysler because they said one of the things to do is go to the unemployment office in Kokomo and put your name down, let them know you're a veteran. And in a year you'll get a job either at Chrysler or at Delco. And I ended up getting a job at Chrysler.
Okay.
In Kokomo for over a year, which, they paid big money back then.
Yeah, that was still a big time for the car industry. That whole area. Northwestern Indiana, you had Gary was up there making the steel mills and shit like that. And then you had obviously Detroit, where all the automakers, but all that stuff went to those areas. Like it's like all the surrounding areas, all the states and stuff are all the support areas to feed the Detroit, automobile machine.
Yeah, we were central Indiana. We made transmissions there.
Okay. How'd you like that?
Well, the first, I was worked in shipping and receiving. The first night I did it was pretty rough, but after I got used to it, I liked it, and I got in pretty good shape there. And then a year later, I get laid off.
Did you regret getting out of the Army? Some guys like want to get out of the military, and then they get out, and then they're like, "Fuck, man, I shouldn't have done that." Like I had a good gig going.
No, I did not regret getting out of the Army at all because it was a pretty bad assignment where I was at, and again, it was desolate area, and there was constant harassment, all the time from the NCOs and the officers there, just constantly searching our barracks for drugs because there's a lot of drugs going on back then.
Yeah, that was a big time for that. That was something I was going to bring up, like something we don't really talk about much anymore is heavy drug use after the Vietnam War into the 80s, right? And before they started mandatory drug testing everybody.
Well, we were getting tested back then.
Yeah. Did you lose a lot of guys?
The only thing they tested for was marijuana and cocaine, which is kind of funny because you couldn't find marijuana in Germany. You could only find hash.
Oh, okay.
So
everybody's just smoking hash, huh?
Everybody's smoking hash, which is not in the any of the testing at the time. I don't know what they test for now because
Shit, I think they test for everything now.
Yeah, I really don't know because it's been a long time, and so
yeah, I've known
guys. No, I didn't regret getting out of the Army, and then later on again, I had the crisis again. I got laid off from Chrysler. I got a job as an interpreter for the migrant farm workers in central Indiana, and they lost the contract. So I'm like, I got to do something. So I went to the unemployment office and I saw this thing, Army Reserve Technician. I thought, well, I can join the Army Reserve. And so I joined the Army Reserve for a year trial, and then I got a job when I was at AIT at Fort Sam Houston in Ohio.
Okay.
So that's how we ended up in Ohio.
So what were you? Well, first off, before I want to talk about that, but I didn't know you were an interpreter for migrant farm workers.
Yeah.
How long did you?
I worked there for about 3 or 4 years in Kokomo, Indiana. I was I'll just say an associate.
Okay.
And, I took intakes that was like a welfare program for migrant farm workers to kind of hold them over till they got their food stamps, till they can get welfare or, whatever program they could get it in. And so later on, I did so well in the company, I got a job in Marion as a supervisor. So we moved to Marion, and so I got that job, and then I lost that job because of the contract. And then I actually started working as an orderly in a psychiatric geriatric nursing home for a while.
Oh my God! Did you have to wrestle anybody down?
Oh yeah, there was a few times that we had some issues, but
What year was this around?
Huh?
What year was this?
Oh, it was probably around 82, 81, 82. because I
So
didn't join the Army Reserve till '83.
was this when Reagan was in office?
I'm not really sure.
Because I know when Reagan was in office, there was something changed where they couldn't hold psychiatric patients. So there's a huge change in the psychiatric world and like releasing of psychiatric patients and stuff like that. That's the only reason I ask. But we
They
don't
were
have to talk
just on
about it.
award. They had their own rooms and they were on award. And the only person that I actually remember restraining was Moses. He was 103 years old, and he always liked to go after some of the women in the nursing home.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he was actually a
103-year-old dude.
Yeah, he was a slave too, in his probably early in his life. But
Oh, no way.
yeah, but so you restrain him. Say, here, Moses, here's a glass of wine. You give him some grape juice. He gets restrained for about an hour. Then he gets up and starts patrolling again.
Hold on, you knew a guy that was a slave?
Yeah, well, he was 103 years old. I mean, he was a patient. I really didn't know him. I knew him as a patient.
I mean, but that's so crazy.
Yeah.
Dude, I mean, at that point, he had to have been one of the last ones alive, right?
Yeah, well, in 83, 82, 81, 82, so he was 103, so 18, yeah. He said he was a slave when he was younger, so he must have been a kid when he was a slave, but...
What year did slavery end again? We just had Juneteenth the other day, but I don't know.
1865, but that's when it's supposed to have been, but that doesn't mean it ended all the way in 1865.
Yeah. Huh. Wow. Huh. Anyway, man, that's crazy.
Yeah, he would patrol around and, you'd restrain him for an hour after he got caught, and then, he'd give him some grape juice and he'd be out on the hunt again.
Get rehydrated, get some energy going from the grape juice and get back at it.
At 103 years old.
When you went to join the Army Reserve,
yes.
like what was like the, I don't know, what was your thought process? Like, okay, I'm gonna go. Did you do it as like, this is a temporary kind of in between jobs kind of thing? I'm gonna do it for a little bit, or did you go into it as like, I'm just gonna finish out my retirement doing this?
Well, I actually tried to go. I started to go active duty, but of course, they said I weighed too much. But you can join the Army Reserve. That's what they said at the time. So they referred me to an Army Reserve counselor, and I was like, yeah, I was kind of joking around. I don't want to join, but I'm here, So he's like, yeah, man, I got this petroleum specialist. I'm like, dude, I'm not pumping any gas.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I got this combat medic. I'm like, I'm not pulling dead bodies off the battlefield either. He's like, okay, well, I got this counselor. I said, now that's something I might be interested in. So I joined on a trial one period. They had that at the time. There was a trial one period where you can join for a year. And after the year's up, you can still make your determination if you wanted to do that. So I went on, and in between that time, that's when I got the job in Ohio as a technician, which you had to have dual status, which means you had to be in the Army Reserve and work for the Army as a civilian. So that's how I got started in that career.
Okay.
So I just re-enlisted, and I worked in Ohio for 3 or 4 years, and I got a promotion as a civilian, so we moved to Chattanooga.
Yeah.
So I had to get another MOS.
So you were just switching around. It's weird how the reserves. It seems like it's easy to do that. You're like, I want to move. I'm going to go to this reserve center. I'm going to go and get a new MOS
I got
now.
Promotion. I got a promotion as a civilian, and so when you get a promotion as a civilian, you have 1 year to get MOS qualified. And so once you get the MOS qualification, again, then you have to have it within a year, or else they can kick you out of the whole program. You lose your reserve status and you lose your civilian job, which I became patient admin. The first one I went in for the Army Reserve was behavior. So I was a behavioral science NCO. And so when I went to Chattanooga, I became a patient administrative specialist, which I handled all the medical records, medical dental records, et cetera.
Okay, so when you were a counselor, though, what kind of issues did guys have that you were dealing with?
Well, that's later on. And as you see on my resume, basically my Army resume, I later on down the line in Chattanooga, they changed after Desert Storm. They changed. So, but before that, my first gig was I went to Fort Knox to deal with adjustment disorders to the military. And, a lot of guys have problems. And this is right after I got out of AIT in 84, 85, around there. A lot of guys had problems, adjusting to the military. They're not used to discipline, etc., or alcoholics coming down there and they can't have anything to drink or smoke or intake or whatever, or things like that. And so, and plus, I was another gig I had in Indianapolis. I was massaging casualties and then evaluating the treatment plan given to them by sister units. And so then later on, after I went to Chattanooga, and then later on after that, reverted to a U.S. Army hospital. Then I went to Fort Benning and Fort Gordon. Fort Gordon was interesting, and I'll tell you why. Because Fort Gordon is where all the infantry and paratroopers are trained. So I was at for my 2-week annual training, they sent me to just a regular outpatient center, and there was a lot of command referrals. And command referrals means that these guys have got issues. So a guy comes in. There's 2 interesting stories I have from Fort Gordon. The first guy comes in and tells me he meets a girl in the park and she's got a snake. So I'm thinking this ought to be interesting, because how do you meet a girl in the park because she's got a snake? Well, it turns out as we get on further down the story, she belonged to a motorcycle gang. And so about 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 of these guys come in with pistols that pointed at both of them, and they start ejaculating over him. And they're like, dude, you don't realize that this is a problem. Well, I love her. I'm like, Dan, there's nothing I can do for you. So,
Hold on, what? They came, like, you said 3 or 4 guys came with pistols and what?
Yeah, they were ejaculating over them while they were laying in bed in the middle of the night. They were part of the motorcycle gang.
Oh, that's fucking gross.
And I'm like, and you ain't got a problem with this. He's like, well, I love her. I'm like, there's nothing I can do for you, man.
Dude. Yeah, so that's one of the...
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say if you're that far gone, it's like, what can you say to somebody like that? Like, it's like, dude, you've lost all sense of, all common sense and logic, reasoning. It's all gone. Like, if you think that's an acceptable thing, like, I don't know.
Well,
we live in a weird world with all kinds of people.
The things that they pounded into our heads there, you got to listen to what they tell you. Anything, expect to hear anything from anybody at any time, which is true. So the next guy comes in now at Fort Benning. You've probably never been to Fort Benning, but
which one is the one that's by the Masters golf course?
That's Fort Gordon.
Okay, I remember going there when we were kids to come down to visit you while you were down there.
So Fort Benning is on the border of Alabama and Georgia. Mm-hmm. So anyway, all the infantry and paratroopers train there again, like I said. So when you're going off post, there's like 5 exits into, I forget the name of the town there. But the first exit is Victory Drive. Mm-hmm. And it's commonly referred to as VD Drive. And it's because, E1 to E4, buy here, pay here, we'll do your tattoos, get a car, So this guy comes in, he's another command referral, he's an E6, he has no money. And and he has no money to pay his bills. That the creditors are calling his commander, blah blah blah. So I'm like, what's going on? Well, I got a girlfriend. I'm like, okay, and where'd you meet her? In the strip club. I'm like, okay. So
yeah,
I'm like,
I knew a few guys that dated strippers.
I'm like, you realize that when you're not there, she has other boyfriends, right? No, she doesn't. I'm the only boyfriend she's got. I'm like, okay, if that's what you think. And so what was happening was that she was using all his money, for coke and for heroin and whatever other drugs that she was on. And, so she was just spending all his money dry because she was a junkie. And I'm like, and you don't see problems with this. Well, I love her. I'm like, there's nothing I can do for you, man.
I know guys, I know a guy that dated a stripper, but he was totally just like, whatever, man. Like, I get it. I don't care. And I'm like, there's no way, dude. There's no way that I could date a stripper and just know, like, that's just I don't know. I don't get it. Yeah. But some people are, are okay with it. But weird stuff being told to you is probably why most psychologists or therapists have to have their own therapist too, because they got to talk. Because they got to talk about some of the weird shit they hear. Because it probably really opens your eyes to people, like society, like Jesus Christ, we're all fucked up, like.
Yeah. Well, then I went to Fort Leavenworth for a 2-week annual training, behind the bars. That was interesting. So there was 2 cases there that I didn't, I bet what I was doing there, they had me conditioning these people to get them ready to go back out into the real world, like, how to get an interview, how to this,
Yeah.
that, how to communicate,
Ho-
whatever, how to be back into the, how to get back into mainstream
Real,
society.
real, real quick before you go into what you did, you want to explain to people that don't know what Fort Leavenworth is, what that is?
Fort Leavenworth is a U.S. disciplinary barracks for anybody who receives disciplinary action through the military. A lot of times they get busted to E1 and for I don't know what about officers, even though so they go there and they serve their time in the jails, and even in Leavenworth, officers are separated.
Oh, really?
Yes, they have. There's three classifications there. There's the enlisted, there's the officers, and there's the females.
Oh, really? Okay.
So when I was
Is
there was like about 11 females and 23, 24 officers, and the rest were, enlisted
is it
personnel.
considered a maximum security prison?
Yes. There's
Okay.
more than there's a federal prison there in Leavenworth. It's a regular prison outside of the gate.
Oh, okay. I thought it was just Leavenworth.
No,
So
it's
it's
Fort
part of.
Leavenworth.
So it's part of it. So, but it's more than one prison system put together.
There's
Is what you're
Fort
saying.
Leavenworth, the military installation. There's the federal prison, Leavenworth, that belongs to the civilian population.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid reading you had the Fort Leavenworth like prisoner's handbook,
Yeah, I
and
saw that.
I remember flipping through that, and like it was showing like how their racks had to be made and stuff. It was like every day was almost like boot camp style, and I'm like, that sucks, man.
Yep,
Like
every day.
I
So,
just, oh man. So what kind of people did you meet at Fort Leavenworth?
so like I said, I was getting them ready to preparing them to get to bit back to mainstream society. But anyway, so before they did that, they had me read a bunch of these cases. So there's two cases that really stuck with me. One was this lieutenant colonel or this guy. I'm not sure what rank he was, but he was in Germany and he was infatuated with this lieutenant colonel's wife. So he followed her to the park, and so he did something. I don't know. And then he started stabbing her, and or he's raping her. So he stabbed her like 32 times with a pair of scissors or something like that. And when she wasn't responding, he started shoving rocks up her vagina.
What the
Yeah,
dude?
and so now you know why this dude's in prison for life. And that's not the rest of it, Justin. He also cut off her breast and put him in his pocket and took a taxi back to the barracks.
Jesus Christ, man.
So now you know why some people belong in Fort Leavenworth.
Dude, I mean, I try to tell people like the military is a reflection of society,
Yep.
and there are psychos in the military, there are
Yep.
child rapists in the military, like
Yep.
it's just it's not a majority, just like it's
No.
not in the civilian population, it's not a majority, but
No.
they're there,
Yep.
and I think it really brought a lot of opened a lot of people's eyes, and maybe I'm going to open people's eyes right now that may not have known this, but the Marine Corps started posting all their court-martial summaries on their website. So you can look up the Marine Corps court-martial summaries, and you can go through and read all the convictions for it, just crazy stuff, like stuff like that. Not like, I mean, that would probably be national news if something like that happened, but like just other stuff though, I mean, I remember at Camp Lejeune when I was there was a guy running, and another dude, or I think he was running, or might have been in the barracks room, one dude killed another dude with an axe. He hit him in the head and killed him with an axe, and then I think he dropped him off in the woods next to the running trail. That might have been what happened. But it's like, the zero defect mentality of like for military and police officers and stuff like that, it's just something, it's just never going to happen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like they're no matter what kind of screening you put them through and training you put them through, there's always going to be a psycho or someone with some kind of issues that makes it through that, and it's just, dude, that's insane though. So this dude was a stalker and then like killed her and then just mutilated. Damn.
Yeah. So the next
Is he
guy,
still alive? Do you ever look up any of these prisoners?
No, this is like I don't remember their names. This is so long ago. This is like '86 that I was there.
Yeah.
So the next guy, it was kind of funny. So this guy's in a talk, an operations center at his battalion. He's an E3. He's bored to death. He's been there for a year or two. You get bored easily when you're sitting there in the middle of the night with nothing to do.
Yeah.
So he dreams up a Jethro Bodine 007 scheme. He's going to become a double agent. and turn
Oh
over
my
some
God.
secrets of the military to Germans so that they can give him secrets so that he can
Who?
take them back to the intelligence community.
What did you describe him as? A what? Jeffrey Bodine?
Jethro Bodine,
Who,
007.
who's that?
That's the guy from Beverly Hillbillies. When he talked about
Oh,
Jethro Bodine, he always talked about he was a secret agent, 007,
oh,
007.
really?
Yeah, if you haven't watched Beverly Hillbillies in a while, I'm assuming.
I mean, I'm sure I remember seeing it as a kid, like reruns of it
Yeah,
as a kid, but no, I
yeah.
don't remember any kind of Beverly Hillbillies references.
Well, that's the reference that Jethro Bodine would use. I'm going to be a double agent, 007, because you know 00 double ought.
Yeah.
That's how he referred to it.
So, so this dude decides to turn over, to
He
turn
he he,
over.
he thinks he's going to have some secrets because he works in a talk, you know. So he an
Yeah.
operations center. So he finds something that's really not even classified and turns it over to this German national and the German says, okay, you know, I'll get you some secrets. And later on, you know, the Polizei come and they arrest him, turn him over to the MPs, and now he's in Leavenworth for 4 years. It's like, dude, how stupid are you?
4 years.
Yeah,
That's it, man.
yeah.
Well,
Well, you know, he really didn't do anything. He didn't give any classified information, and
yeah.
he just decided to have this scheme. And I'm like, how stupid are you, man?
Yeah, he's just like, hey, who wants some stuff? I got the PFT roster.
Like he's selling it out there like they're selling sausages on the sidewalk over there.
Yeah.
It's
That's
kind of,
yeah, you don't really hear about that too much. You know, counterintelligence work in the military and having to take dudes down that are trying to sell secrets or something like that.
yeah, but it was just a scheme that didn't, you know, it was just the stupidity, really. That's why he ended up there.
Did you ask him why he like what his
I
what
never
was the
saw him.
thinking? Like, why would you want to do that?
I never saw him. They just had me reading the cases before I got to the population for the mainstream society release, so I knew what kind of personalities I'd be dealing with.
Okay.
So you know, so I had my own techniques that I used for how I would get people to interact with each other and how I get them to interview and how to write resumes, etc. So those
Yeah.
type of things. You know, like I said, preparing them because they had letters of reference of what kind of jobs they were going to get. You know, things like that. They were remorseful about being what they did, and you know, they've done their time and they're trying to get out.
Was there a death row there?
Yeah, there's a death row there, and they actually had an electric chair there too. They showed it to us.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the other thing I didn't know, and somebody
Did
told me this, and you know, it's gossip, I guess, but you know, if you're a prisoner there and you die there, you're buried face down because you're shamed, you're disgraced.
really?
Now that's what I heard. I don't know if that's true or not. You know, it seems like it's something so weird that it probably is true.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
That's
I
pretty
really don't know
wild.
if that's the truth or not. But I heard somebody talk about that.
I guess that's if your family doesn't claim you.
I don't know, but either way, if you're in there for life and you know you died there, you're disgraced and you're buried into their cemetery face down.
Huh.
Oh, that's what I heard. Now, I can't say if that's the truth or not. I
Isn't
don't
it
know.
isn't it weird that we do these weird like little ceremonial things like that?
Yeah, it sounds something so eerie that it's probably true.
Yeah.
I could see it being true.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. Um yeah, I don't know, man. What was it like seeing the electric chair? Did you sit in it?
No, I wasn't gonna take a chance sitting in an electric chair. I need to
Like,
get
hey, like,
strapped up.
someone take a picture real quick. Let me sit in.
Yeah, no, they took us down there. They gave us a tour of the
God.
prison when we first got there, and they're like, if anybody steals your badge, you're serving their sentence. Like, okay,
All right, very well.
yeah, no, nobody stole my badge.
Yeah.
So
What working in a prison like that, even if it was only for 2 weeks or whatever, that exposure to a prison life, what did you come away thinking? Like, I don't know, I imagine you saw prisoners differently after actually interacting with them and seeing how they are.
well, a lot of prisoners were on work detail. Like you see them out there loading groceries at the commissary. You see them out there, painting pedestrian stripes. You see them mowing.
Oh,
So
they
there was a
work
lot
on
of
the
those on
base?
work release. Yeah. So they were out on work release, just depending on what level you're at, because there's different levels there.
Yeah.
They talked about when you're first there, you stay on the bottom two floors for 6 months where the lights are always on. You never know what
Yeah.
time it is.
Yeah.
So, that's another one of those tales that is it true or not? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just
Huh.
weird tales you hear inside a prison.
Man. That's something I've thought about, like what it would have been like to get sent to prison for something. Because I got arrested.
Yeah.
Nothing crazy, just
Yeah, I know.
But like to imagine if you would have been 18 and gotten sent to prison for stealing a car. Like what?
Yeah.
That sucks, man. I mean, that's your own fault. That would be your own fault for going, for the most part, for most people. But
the people that were there deserve to be there. There's justice in the military.
So there was no sympathy. You're like, well, fuck you, man. Like,
yeah.
I mean, especially if you're mutilating bodies and stuff. That's,
well,
I don't know. I always try to think of their mindset though, of like what it's like to be there. I'm not necessarily sympathizing with them, but just thinking like, man, that's really got to mess with your head.
That's
being
their
inside
culture.
of that.
That's another culture, and that's their society. And that we have all different societies in society. There's societies within society, and that's one of them.
Yeah, it's weird. People don't realize, I don't think, what you're saying, the society of like, there's a prison culture, there's a hierarchy in prisons and stuff like that. There's just like a lifestyle to it. Some people don't care going to prison.
Like I said, there's societies within society. Your society is going to college. San Diego State is another society.
Yeah, it's a weird one.
I mean, that's a different society. I don't know that society, just like the University of Wisconsin has their own society.
Yeah, these little microcosms.
Yep.
Yeah, that's how you got to get out, interact with all these different people. But those life experiences of like working in a prison for 2 weeks, that's like something I feel like I'd walk away from and be like, damn, that would have an impact, I think.
I think that as all the different things that I did as a counselor in the military, I became more rounded, and I became a better counselor towards the end of my career.
Yeah.
And as I progressed on, I ended up retiring from a medical brigade, which is a 1-star command, as the senior NCO in that command, in that section of the behavioral section. So, it tells you that I went a long way in my military career as far as my NCO career.
Yeah.
To get to a brigade level with the 1-star.
When you were with, when we lived in Chattanooga, you were with the 377th Combat Support Hospital. Were you a counselor there? Is that what you were doing, or you were doing the admin job there?
I was the patient administration, but when we went to the desert in Desert Storm, there was a psychiatric casualty, a battle fatigue casualty that came in, and they told me to work on him, which I did, and there was nothing I could really do for him because he was just too freaked out. He was a chaplain's assistant, and he was in artillery unit. And, he just was battle fatigued so bad with all the shells and the sounds and so on and so forth that he just had to be evacuated through the chain of evacuation.
Huh. Pretty wild.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about, like, what was it like when they told you, like, hey, you guys are deploying. You guys are going to this place called Iraq. This is like before internet. I remember going to your office and you guys having typewriters. Yeah. So this is like, you couldn't just Google, like, hey, let me get on Google and figure out what the fuck Iraq is,
Well, that big map that we took a picture of when you was a kid, I had actually gotten that map off of one of those Sky Mall magazines, and I thought it'd be cool to put in the reserve center. So, one of the first things we all did was run to that map to see where Kuwait's at, because we never heard of Kuwait.
Yeah, it's such a tiny country.
After we found out Kuwait was invaded, and so then the next thing we're working there, and the next thing all these people are lining up, finding excuses of why they can't go to the desert. And it's like,
really?
You signed up for it. And some people had legitimate excuses, but one nurse comes in there and she's a commissioned officer. Well, I got a bonus. That's why I can't go. It's like, why do you think you got a bonus? Hello? Because you're in the reserves. That's why you got a bonus. Or I got the GI Bill.
I'll tell you what, man. There are some really good reservists out there, but I had a really bad taste in my mouth after I worked as a mechanic in Iraq.
Yeah.
I was I got attached to 2nd Supply Battalion as a mechanic, and half the unit was reservist. And it's just a completely different culture for those guys. Like their relationship with NCOs and stuff like that. Like they're way more laid back. And, because there's really no time to do their jobs, and none of them were very good at their jobs, and it was just like, there were some solid dudes there. There were some really good dudes. And then there were dudes there that were just shitty at their jobs and bitching about being there. Like, why am I here? I should be back at my other job. It's like, dude, you fucking signed up for it. Like, you're gladly accepting the benefits of it up until the point that you're actually called upon. Like, get the hell out of here, man. You don't get to choose that, or decide that.
It's like that in every reserve, whether it be Army, Marine, Navy, Air Force, whatever. I mean, when we went to Iraq, we part of our mission is to set up the hospital, which takes 10 to 12 hours. Because when that hospital's set up, it has 200 beds, an emergency room, 4 operating rooms, a pharmacy, a laboratory, running water, heat, and air. And there's 200 beds. I think I said that. But anyway, so when we get there, we get to an active duty unit that has no clue of how to set up their hospital.
Yeah.
But that's all we did. Every annual training, we went to, to Camp Shelby or to Fort Bullis outside of Fort Sam Houston to learn how to set up this hospital. But these guys, they were from Fort Gordon, I think, but they had no clue even how to even set it up.
So that's the kind of hospital probably that they're using now, right? These field hospitals these emergency field hospitals they set up for COVID, like the National Guard and stuff got called in to set up.
Yeah,
probably something like that.
You see them with the tan tents, right?
Yeah. I mean, tents, they've set them up inside of buildings.
The lesson learned after Desert Storm was you don't deploy the whole hospital because it's 750 people in that hospital.
Yeah.
And, like I just told you how big the hospital is. So you only deploy parts of the hospital.
Yeah.
So those are called temper tents is what they're called. And so, but yes, they still use those, but they don't deploy the whole combat support hospital. They only deploy parts of the hospital.
Okay.
Like maybe a 40-bed wing or, maybe 2 operating rooms or whatever for support. Yeah. But they don't deploy the whole hospital because I remember riding into Iraq and it took us, there was a platoon of truck company that had to haul us into Iraq. And, we rode there all night long. And we got there at 6 o'clock in the morning into Iraq in the Basra. And I remember just looking back in the middle of the night, just seeing truck lights as far as you could see. It's like, I don't even know why we never got attacked because we were just so obvious,
Yeah.
Going down the road.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at that point, you guys weren't on the front lines. Were you there or were you like just behind them?
Well, what our mission was, we were supposed to go into Iraq, set up outside of Basra so that we could start receiving casualties from 7th Corps. So we get there at 6 o'clock in the morning after riding all night long in the back of a 5-ton, and it's, as you know, riding the back of a 5-ton, you don't get much sleep.
Yeah.
But as soon as we got there, so we get off at 6 o'clock, we're like, oh my God, we're so tired, let's go to sleep. You got to set up the hospital. I'm like, oh God. So about 4 hours later, here comes the company commander, Captain Rambo. That's his name, Captain Rambo. The war is over on his megaphone, the war is over. We're like, thank God. So
Jesus, I'm tired of this war.
Well, 4 hours that we're starting to set up the hospital. It takes 10 hours to set it up, and we've been riding all night from about 5 o'clock till 6 o'clock the next morning. So,
that's the legacy of the Gulf War is how short it was, and I feel like that because of that it makes people gloss over some of the like heroic things that happened because there were some like amazing events that happened, during that war. And it's just like, because people just kind of like, well, it was only for a couple days, so how serious could it have been? But, go ahead.
After we got done and we're starting to ride back, there was an engineer company in front of us blowing up explosives on the road. You could hear it blowing up. And going by, there were some Iraqi prisoners, and they all looked the same. They had hair down to their ears, and all black hair. They had the same OD green uniforms on. They all look the same. It's like they all look like each other.
Do they have the mustache?
So we go back to the berm where we were sitting outside the berm, and then we get called to go to Kuwait City to operate a 40-bed hospital. So we did that for 6 weeks, and one of our legacies, we operated on a monkey from the Kuwaiti Zoo.
Really?
Because being in patient administration, I tracked. So in the 4 weeks we were there, we had 863 cases and 1 monkey.
What? Why did you guys work on a monkey?
It just because the Iraqis had shot up the Kuwaiti Zoo, and for some reason or another, this monkey got to our hospital. I don't know how he even got there.
So they just patching up a monkey?
Yeah, it was kind of funny, really.
Did he survive?
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, then they started talking about how many
Can someone that's listening to this find out what happened to the monkey that was shot in Iraq? That's got to be something that's like still known about,
Yeah.
Like he survived the war, man.
Yeah, he did. I mean, I think they farmed him out to other different places, the different, the animals that got shot, that because the Iraqis were
Why'd
there
they
to shut
shoot
up
the
the
animals?
Why they did that, I have no clue, but
Huh. Bummer. So I remember when you left when I was, how long were you guys like staged for it? Because there was a pretty big buildup.
So we got notified on December 9th that we were going to mobilize. We left before Christmas, about December 2019, 21st, somewhere in that neighborhood. We go to Fort Bragg. We start processing.
Oh, it was that quick. So 2 weeks. It was like, hey, man, you guys are going to the war. And then 2 weeks later.
Yeah, we're at Fort Bragg.
Okay.
And so January 9th, we get ready to depart Fort Bragg. We're getting on the airplane, out on the military MAC. And so we arrive in Saudi Arabia at like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning on January the 11th. That's how long it took us to get there. So we get to so they put us on all these buses with all these old Saudi guys. And it's like the first time we've ever seen a Saudi guy, all wrapped up in their robe and their hat and, all their garb that they wear.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay.
We called them man dresses.
Yeah, whatever they were, So they take us to this cantonment area, and I'm then, I'm in the first bus, and I'm the senior NCO of the bus. So guess what? I got to get out in front of the bus and ground guide the bus back and forth between the berms, to the concrete things up to the gate, which MPs are up here with M60s.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm gonna die. So we finally get up there, and they let us off the bus. The first sergeant holds us in formation, which is stupid, because there's 700 of us. We get to our tents, wherever we're going to go, and the very first night we're there, not in our company, but somebody had laid their head on a gas mask, and the atropine went off and shot it and went into the back of their head and killed them.
Fuck, man. That is...
So there was the first death that was there the first night we were there, but it wasn't in our company because
so they
used their gas mask pillow.
They use their gas mask carrier as a pillow. I would totally use my gas mask carrier as a pillow if I had it.
Yeah.
Dang. That's a lesson learned.
Yeah. So then the next couple of days, we were there for like 6 weeks. Every day from 1600 to 0400, Scuds are, getting the alert every day, getting in MOP 4.
What was that like?
Oh my God, we ended up sleeping and everything up to the, from the pants down. The only thing we had to put on then was the shirt, the gloves, and the mask.
Yeah. How long would that take you?
A minute or two, because then as a platoon sergeant, which I became, I had to go check everybody in my platoon and make sure they had all their crap on right, which of course half of them didn't. I'm like, dude, how many times we practiced this crap?
Like, dude, we've been doing it for 2 weeks, bro.
We've been doing it for longer than that. We've been doing it ever since I've been in the Army Reserve.
Yeah, but I'm talking about now you're doing it every day.
I know. It's like, come on, man.
It's like, come on. What do we even tell you? Every day. I can tell you the same thing.
It's like it's repetition after a while, but every day, 1600 to 400, at least once or twice, there's bombing, incoming Scud, supposedly. Of course, there was never any chemicals on there, thank God. There wasn't, but, you never know, because the first night, I remember these guys who I had high respect for in East 7, we're all going to die, sitting on our bed crying. I'm like, come on, man, put your shit on. You're not going to die. Put your stuff on. Let's go, I just couldn't believe it. Some of these people, their reaction. When death could be imminent, it's really weird how people react.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure.
I mean, I was like, I got to get my stuff on and make sure everybody else has got their stuff on and maybe survive this mess,
So the first time a lot of people, you're saying the first time it ever happened, what was going through your mind the first time a real alarm went off? You're like, oh shit, this is for real.
Yeah, we was kind of conditioned that it could happen at any given time. And then when it first came on, we're like, oh, great. You got to put all this crap on and get it together. And the first couple of days, I wasn't a platoon sergeant. I was a squad leader, but my platoon sergeant got relieved about a weekend. So I became the platoon sergeant.
Was he one of the guys that, not having a good time out there crying about it?
No, he was the NBC NCO.
Oh my God. What did he get relieved for?
The first sergeant relieved him because he just didn't like him.
That's like the guy you would need around, I think.
Well, because this guy, he was kind of a weird guy anyway. He was like a backwoods kind of Tennessee guy.
Well, hold on now. Come on. I
I
grew
mean, he
up in
was a good guy.
Tennessee.
Don't get me wrong. He was great at what he did, and he knew what to do. He was a great field soldier. He was that kind of guy.
Yeah. Well, that's good
But
then.
his methods of getting you there wasn't exactly army.
Okay.
So that's why he got relieved.
That sucks.
Yeah. So that's
Man.
what happened with him. But anyway, so we was in the Cantonment area for about 6 weeks, but a couple of weeks while we were there, they were building trying to build another guard shack. So they were, tunneling in the sand, and another guy gets killed because all the sand collapses on him and he suffocates. So,
Oh, damn.
so there were two deaths there, and every night, even though at the Scuds, you could always hear a small arm fire because there was a platoon or a squad or two squads of infantry every night going outside the wire firing.
Yeah.
So
Just
that's
doing
why
some training.
they weren't training; they were protecting the area. But I don't know why they were firing small arms, but I don't know because we were close to the port too. So,
Yeah.
but after we got out of there, then we became a MASH unit, basically, just how you see MASH on TV.
Dude, how old do you think I am? I don't watch MASH. I can't ever remember watching MASH.
Well, if you've ever watched MASH, it's a comedy.
I know it's a comedy. I just never.
Yeah, well, that's what ours was. It was a comedy.
Yeah. Oh,
It
really?
got to be a comedy.
Yeah.
When you've got 750 people, 250 officers, and 200 females of those 750 people, you can only imagine what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Damn, man.
A lot of things were happening.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Did you guys ever have any close calls with the Scuds incoming?
No, not really. Only the alarm systems that we had when we were in the Cantonment area for the first 6 weeks we were there, waiting on our equipment to arrive.
Yeah.
So
I
once we
knew.
got our
Wasn't there
equipment,
like a chow hall or something that got hit during
that
the
was
Gulf War?
that was later on in the current conflict, about 2004, 2003.
Oh, was it? I thought that for some reason I was thinking that was the Gulf War. Huh.
Actually, 2006, 2007. The reason I know that because because I worked for the Army as a civilian, as you know, one of our down trace units, a finance company soldier, was killed and another one lost his leg. And
Oh, really?
yeah, that's how I know about that because it was hit in the dining area in the green zone.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's how I know that because my
Dude.
family had to go to Ohio to the funeral, and then, the other guy in Wausau, Wisconsin, he lost an eye and he lost a leg.
Yeah, man. There's nothing worse than incoming. I don't think.
Yeah.
The especially if you know it's coming, you're just like, man, where's this thing gonna hit? And then after
Yeah,
a
we
while,
had-
you just get used to it. You're like, whatever, dude. If I get hit, I get hit. Whatever.
Well, that's why you always make sure you got your Mach 4 on, and checking everybody. But, after a while, we got so used to sleeping in it that it just became natural.
Well, so I never had to, like, the guys that did the push into Iraq for the current for OIF, they had to do that in MOP gear. I've never been in any kind of situation where we had to have any kind of MOP protection. There was nothing that ever. There was no concern about that. I know in Iraq when I was there, guys would have to. They started making guys carry their gas mask anytime. They always had to have their gas mask on them because they were using chlorine bombs. But at the same time, we were like, I don't think that works for chlorine. I don't think that mask is a chlorine mask. So it was one of those other stupid rules that the military's like, you have to do this. You're like, why? It doesn't do anything. They're like, doesn't matter. Do it. Like, all right, like whatever.
I know there is nothing like military wisdom.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, man, just sitting in the desert, like the thing that people forget also is that during that period up to it, where you guys were waiting and training and all this stuff, like you didn't know it was only going to last 7 days.
No, we had no clue.
Like,
we had no clue what was happening. The only thing we knew, we was going into Iraq to receive casualties and get ready.
But they didn't.
Going to be incoming casualties.
They didn't. There was no estimates of like, hey, man, we might be here for a year, or anything like that.
No.
Was there any kind of set rotation home date, like no later than, like, hey, if the war continues on, we're leaving by this date?
Well, a year.
Okay.
The year was the rotation.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, You can't be mad about that, man. You know,
No,
like
no,
people that want to go to war haven't been to war. I think like for something where you're gonna sit there and take incoming Scud missiles and shit like that. Like
yeah,
you don't want to do that shit for a year.
it wasn't
You
fun.
know?
It
No,
wasn't
like
a fun time, but I made it through there, and now it's like one of the things I always told guys there, like, and how boredom set in because when we came back from Kuwait, we got stuck outside the berm, and the Alabama National Guard had control over us. Our higher headquarters, our brigade had left us sitting there and left us to the guard. And so anyway, so we sat there for 3 weeks, and it's just boring. Nothing to
yeah,
do all day. People go get a block of ice in town, come back, play Monopoly, do the same thing. That's all we did.
yeah,
And it's just people just going crazy with boredom. And it's like one of the philosophies I had is time always passes. Well, now here it is. How many years later? 1991, 29, 30 years almost now has
yeah,
passed. And so time always passes, and that's something that never changes.
yeah. War
So
is boring for the most part. There's
yeah,
that like
I mean,
1% time frame where that's like crazy excitement or adrenaline.
yeah,
That's why people want to keep going back that 1% time.
well, we're in a hospital unit. It's a lot different. You see a lot of different things, and we had casualties that came in.
Yeah.
So I mean, there was some casualties that came in. So
Well,
it
you
wasn't
said
like,
what 800 and something?
well, a lot of those were outpatient too. I mean, there were outpatient visits. There were
Yeah, I
lab
know.
visits, things like that. But we had a 40-bed ward, and I'd say we had at any time maybe 10 to 15 people in the ward.
From like combat casualties or just in general?
Combination of both.
Yeah. What kind of
Because
injuries were you seeing for combat casualties?
well, like a French guy came in where he had stepped on a Chinese toe popper. That's what they called that landmine. So he came in and he had blood from his toes all the way up to his face. I mean, he just looked like horrible, just covered in blood. And by the time we got him cleaned up, he had his big toe left. Is all he had left on his right foot.
Fuck. Yeah.
So I mean, but when he came in, he looked pretty bad.
So you guys were doing not just American forces, you were doing all coalition.
Yeah, because we're in Kuwait and
Yeah.
we're in the chain of evacuation for emergency treatment, and so there was 3 cases I remember. That was one of them. The second was this guy. He was hauling ammunition. He was in an EOD or an ordnance, and I think he was driving an M880 or something, but it caught fire. So he jumped over a berm, which he thought would protect him because it was probably going to explode. But what he didn't know was an 80-foot drop.
Oh, jeez.
He had a skull fracture when he came in.
Oh my God.
So that's that guy. Of course, he lived. And then we had the 2 special forces guys that came in, and they were all chuckling and stuff. They had bullets shot in their stomach. They wanted to see the X-rays. Look at this. This is cool. Look, man, I got the bullet. Where's yours at?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're like, oh, these guys probably shot each other with the AK-47s. It's like, no, they didn't. It was just kind of weird. But so it was, they were good dudes coming in there. So, but that was probably the most extent that we had was those 3 instances.
So were you guys like a roll 2 or roll 3 like casualty center? Like
We
what level on the chain?
Well, we were like a MASH unit, for not a first aid, but not
Next
a battalion aid
next
station.
level from there.
Yeah,
Okay.
the next level from battalion aid station.
Okay, gotcha.
Because we had 40 beds, and again,
So you were basically stabilizing people, and they were moving if they needed it. So, or the role would have been stabilize patients that were really messed up, and then they would move on to like Germany and get that next level care surgery stuff.
Well, and since you talked about that, I'll tell you. Right before the war, I went to Dukes Air Force Base in Florida, and so I was at the highest level. And this was in July before the war even happened, and that was my job, was to move patients through the chain of evacuation. So they'd move through theater, like you said, through Germany or to the Mercy or Comfort, or back to Walter Reed. And that's where they'd eventually end up at, Walter Reed till discharge.
Yeah.
So it's just weird that I went there before the war happened, and then the war happened, and then I'm working in one of those chain of evacuation places.
Yeah.
So anyway, but yeah, that's what it was like. It was okay, I guess, but it bored him, and I'm not a field soldier. But I got by.
Yeah. The boredom, man, and then there's no technology. You
Oh,
know,
no.
there
No, our
was no.
technology is pulling the string standing on a skid with water. That's how you take a shower. That's our technology. Or
Mm,
burning things with diesel,
yeah. Well, they still do that. Well,
with black
or
smoke. But let's don't give away our position, okay?
in my buddy was with 3-2 in northern part of where was he at? Musakela, and they had burners. They had shit burners. You know, they would burn they had the little whatever. We were using wag bags though. But we would still toss them in the burn pit. So they're still burning it. But there's not a dude that was on duty out there having
No,
to stir it.
fours and below in 55-gallon drums, pouring the diesel on it, stirring it. We had E5 in charge of it.
He told me there was some kid that just kept getting in trouble, so he basically just burned shit for 3 months straight. And I'm like, Jesus, dude, that's
shitty.
that's something else, man. That's a punishment. But I mean, I guess if you keep like doing something stupid, I don't know the situation. So, but what a horrible job. And yeah, it sucks living in tents with people too. You know, like it's just after a while, it just kind of gets old. You know, you want a little bit of privacy and stuff.
Well, my platoon was okay. I mean, there's 10 people in my platoon, so
Yeah.
or not in my platoon, but in my section. Then so we only had 10, 12 people in our platoon or in our tent. So we GP medium.
Okay, so that's not
So
too
it wasn't
bad.
too bad. No, it
Do you
wasn't
still
too
talk to anybody from then?
Yeah,
Yeah.
few people I still talk to. A guy called me the other day from Chattanooga,
Oh, really?
telling me a
Yeah.
guy that was in my tent, that the guy that sold us that little motorcycle, he's about ready to go, because he said he's not even conscious that much anymore. He's just laying in bed all the time now.
Oh,
So,
really?
yeah, the guy, that little tiny motorcycle I
That
had.
Honda, it's like a Honda 125,
Yeah, that one.
like a 1967 Honda 125, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
Jared has that, right?
yeah, he's got it in the garage somewhere. He said, Indiana.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah. So anyway, coming back though. So when you guys came back from the war, I mean, there was a pretty good reception for Soldiers Den. I remember there was like a lot of patriotism. It felt, and I was a little kid. What was I like? What year was this? 91. So I was like 8, 92.
yeah, so he was 8.
So in my own mind, it just seemed like it was very patriotic time frame. Like everybody was all about it. I remember, the overpasses having signs on them and stuff like that. Because you guys all came back in like one pretty big wave, right? Like this was an event that people coming home was an event that was happening like all over the country.
Yeah, we came back in buses from North Carolina,
Yeah.
from Fort Bragg. It was like a 10, 12-hour ride for North Carolina. So we came back. We pulled in the reserve center. There's all the people there. All the officials from the town, and the bigwigs from our higher command, and so on and so forth. And it was a dog and pony show for a while, but it was exciting to come back like that and have a welcome.
The funny thing is though, is when you come back, you just want to like find your family and get the hell out of there. It's like sometimes the unit does put on a show. When I was with 3-6, we marched down the street. The sergeant major wanted us all to march in, so we all marched down the street to our families and then got released from there, which was, it was kind of cool and stuff like that, but it's like sometimes you just want to get off the bus and get the hell out of there.
It was okay. It was exciting being in there, into the formation and everything. And after being released, it was like, hey, this is cool. This is really great. And
it probably made you feel pretty proud, right? Like being in the Army.
Yeah, and then and I was going to tell you later on, another guy and us went to a Chattanooga Lookouts game during the fireworks, which was a bad idea because we were jumping around. Because we were used to getting scudded in these small arms. It's like, oh my God, somebody's trying to kill us now here. It was
man.
Weird.
Yeah,
so,
it booms.
I've gotten over that quite a bit.
That booming noise right when you get back can make you a little jumpy.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying. I was super jumpy when I got back from singing. Mostly from them shooting the recoilless rifle, but there were other explosions as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. Yeah. So, is there anything else you want to like talk about? I just want to kind of cover like the Gulf War and stuff like that, and talk about. I'm not sure what else you did in your career after that. Like, why is it you may
I'll tell you.
wanna...
So after that, they was trying to get me fired in Chattanooga. It was kind of crazy. So.
Oh, really?
In the government, you mess up, you move up. So I got a promotion, so I went to Fort Sheridan. I
Okay.
went I went to an engineer schoolhouse,
How was
and
that?
so that was kind of a great job. I worked there for 5 years, and so at that job, we had a six-state area. I had instructors in 6 states, and we'd go to Fort McCoy, and they taught heavy equipment operator, uh, uh, combat engineer, and carpentry masonry.
Hmm.
So it was cool to go up there to Fort McCoy, and they would always draw these big explosives and go explode things, downrange at Fort McCoy, and it was kind of cool to see the engineers, land sidewalk, making little buildings, and of course now it's as you know, the military's cut way back, but for that
Yeah.
5 year period, my boss was really good. I really enjoyed working for him, and then as I so I got a so I went. I was like, okay, I need to get another promotion because I kept trying to move up within the government because I got to the point where I'm not gonna. It looks like I'm not gonna really go further in my Army career, but I probably can go further in my civilian career.
Hmm.
So I went to Massachusetts and I became a supervisor of a combat support hospital.
That's
Another
right. I
700
forgot you lived in
unit.
Massachusetts for a little bit.
Yeah, and my supervisor, my commander was his name is let me think of it, Colonel. He was a colonel. Um, I'll think of his name here in a minute. Oh, Jonathan Woodson. Jonathan Woodson ended up being a an Obama appointee for all Army health affair, all health affairs for the Army Reserve. He was an appointee by Obama. He also was the surgeon who operated on Jessica Lynch when she returned.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so
Wow.
he was one of the great guys. In the hospital units, you either find a doctor or you find a commander. This guy was a doctor and a commander. He was
I've
one of
heard that
those rare
before.
combinations, and he was a great leader. I really liked working for him. I learned a lot from him, and
Hmm.
so when things happened and they got another commander, then there's a lot of issues that was going on up there because those people were really hard to deal with because they're in the union and then people in Boston and Massachusetts, they got attitudes, man. So
Oh yeah. I've
they're
never I've
really
never been up in that area.
yeah, they're really hard to deal with, and I had a lot of issues there. So, but I got another job back at Fort Sheridan with the military intelligence unit that was standing up.
Okay.
And so there's only 23 people, and I was the first full timer there that was authorized, like 15 full timers, 15 to 23 full timers in 4 states. So I was the first one, and I was the supervisor, of course. So I set it up and we got the unit moving along and everything. And when I left there was probably like I would say 125 reservists and about 15 full-time employees, and it was really moving along. So
Hmm.
in the meantime, there was a transportation group down the street. There was a temporary promotion, so I applied for it, and so I got that job for 9 months. And the guy that I worked for was a West Point graduate, and I learned more from that guy than I did anybody because he really taught me how to be a leader in my supervisory career. And so I had a lot of respect for that guy. He ended up retiring as a two-star general. His name is Don Cornett. So a lot of these people's names I'm mentioning you can find on the internet, and they're pretty impressive, really.
Yeah. So
So
what kind of advice would you give somebody that's getting out of the military and wants to work in like the GS, realm? They're going on to USA Jobs and looking for a job there. What kind of advice would you give to those people?
well, first of all, don't take an Army Reserve technician job or a dual status technician job because that's not one of the jobs that uh, you want now. Even though there are plenty, you could do that to get your foot in the door, but to try and get out of that program is really hard. Like I tried to go to the National the Geographic, whatever service it is, something like that. I forget what it was now, but don't try to become a dual status technician because it's kind of hard. And in the Guard, the dual status technicians have to wear the uniform. Where in the Army Reserve or Air Force Reserve, you wear your civilian clothes. But
Oh, okay. So you're saying someone that works for the government as an employee or as a civilian and as a soldier.
yeah,
Okay.
because you have to. But they changed the rules a lot. That's why I couldn't really advance my civilian career because you had to be in the unit you serviced, and now you can be in any unit you service. But the problem is that they pushed back the retirement age to like where for me it was like 56 and 30 years. Now it's like 62 and 35 years or something like that. I don't know. They just keep pushing it back like Social Security.
Yeah.
So the other thing is that your military service counts, so you can buy that time back, and that counts as your civil service time once
Okay.
you pay once you pay back into the your retirement fund, which that was one of the best things I did. And because I bought back 3 years of time that I did in Germany, I only made like $300 or $3,000 as the E1 D4 in the 70s.
Yeah.
So, and I paid like maybe $1,000 for 3 years, which that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And he gave me 3 years seniority. So anyway, and then so after I got the temporary job, I did so well there that I got the job in Madison, where I ended up becoming a over a brigade. And when I first came here, I had 6 states, 2,500 Army Reserve soldiers, and 182 full-time uniform and civilian full-time personnel that fell directly underneath me, right? Underneath me through the chain of command.
Okay.
So I had a lot of responsibility when I took this job here, which I enjoyed the challenge and I did well at it. So
Yeah.
and,
How do you see different level, like a level that high of a level of supervisor? Like, how do you see that as being different than like being a lower level, like NCO or something like that, like the leadership responsibilities?
well, a lot of times, when you're down at the lower, people have a lot more respect for you because one of the biggest problems, or let me rephrase that, one of the biggest solutions that I gave was that I gave information. And like there was a guy, he's a GS7, he's in somewhere in Wisconsin, but he's a sergeant major for the big command later on. But he's like, hey, I never got this information before about civilian personnel information.
Mm-hmm.
And all this time, it's because when you share information with the people, then they're respecting, like, hey, this guy knows what's happening. He knows what I'm feeling down here. And the very first time I went to a status meeting with our brigade, these people had never seen me. They knew my name. That's about it. But when I started talking about what the problems was with the higher headquarters and how can we resolve these issues, they're like, hey, this guy knows what's happening. So as long as you become educated about your what's going on in your command and you provide information to the people that below you, then they react to that. They're like, hey, this guy knows what's happening and he knows how he
Yeah, he
empathizes
cares
with
about
me.
it. He's actually hands on.
Yeah, he knows something. He's not hands on, but he's trying to help me do my job and be successful at my mission. Finally, somebody wants to help me accomplish my mission. Where a lot of times, you hear this the philosophy is, well, as an officer, I just give you the vision, and as an NCO, you execute. You've
I've
probably
not.
heard that before.
No, I've never heard that actually.
Well, in the Army, that's how that's one of the that's one of the way they've talked about the philosophies is that I had the vision of this is what's going to happen of the mission, and as the NCO, you're going to execute it the best way you see how, and if you need help, I'll give it to you and I'll micromanage you.
Huh. That's No, it's more hand in hand.
But
You're
but when you've been brought up from uh, from the kennel, I'd say, to the being out to the hound being chasing the ball,
mm-hmm.
you're prepared for the chase.
Yeah.
Where the guys down at the bottom level at the kennel, they're down there like, what's going on? I have no clue. What am I supposed to do here? What's happening? How do I do this? I'm so frustrated. I know what I needs to happen, but I can't get it done.
Information.
Yeah, and then when you start getting
Information
information, it's like, because when I first went in Chattanooga, the guy that I worked for, information is power, and he refused to give information to anybody because
Yeah,
everybody
that's
had
never
to come
good.
to him.
That's something I always try to do is like pass information along.
Well,
Like make sure
that,
the dudes, at least if I knew something, at least give them a heads up of kind of what's going on.
yeah.
It's like,
Well,
hey man, I'm gonna be real with you. Here's what's happening, because I think people respond better to that than pussyfooting around or
yeah.
obviously lying to a person or holding
Well,
information. Like when you're holding information from people and they know it, it's like, come on, man, just fucking tell, bring everybody else in on what's going on.
Well, those were the old ways of operating, and when I got here, I had 5 supervisors underneath me, and I had a problem with one of them, and I explained to him, that his thing is he liked to yell and scream at people, and I'm like, Mike, Nazi tactics don't work in the 21st century anymore.
Yeah.
You just can't be that way anymore. You can't. This is not a yelling and screaming generation. You got to
Yeah.
sit down and reason with them and give them logic of how you expect you to get to this end state.
I see that. I mean, anytime, like, I know when I was coming up in the Marines, it was like, dude, someone yelling, you're just like, let them yell, let them finish yelling. Like, when they just start screaming at you, you're like, dude, this guy is just, I knew, I don't remember who he was. I think he was part of the Motor T section when I was with 3.6s. I was a fires guy then. Yeah. And he would just yell at everybody for, like, we were both sergeants, so I didn't care, but he would just yell at soldiers. He would just yell at other Marines just to yell. And it's like, dude, shut the hell up, man. Like, no one respects you. Like, you're using rank as a respect rather than, like, action. You know, it's like, it's such a bad way. You see people come up like that, and no one puts it on paper to keep them from getting promoted, to keep that kind of toxic leadership, you know, down. Yeah, they just let guys continue on.
How effective was that leadership style?
It was garbage. Some guys can do the yelling thing, but, like, well, you know, they're funny about it. Like, I mean, where you know there's a difference between them. Like, they're just like, haha, motivated, like Marine, and they're pissed. You know, there's like a difference. You can tell the difference, and you just get used to that kind of person. Some guys can pull it off, but not very many. And some guys just to yell, and you're just like, you're a douchebag, and I'm not going to listen to anything you say.
Hang on a minute, Justin. Jordan's calling.
Okay.
Hang on. Okay, sorry about that. Now you know that's a cut right there.
Yeah, you're good.
Anyway, so, you know, there is a time to use your voice at certain times, but you just have to know when to distinguish what type of leadership style am I going to execute here today.
Yeah.
For sure. What's the appropriate one? And sometimes yelling is appropriate.
Yeah, I've yelled at guys. There's been a few guys that you're just like, dude, it's the guy you've told to put on your gas mask 20 times the same way, you know, and he keeps fucking it up. That's the kind of guy you yell at. You're like, dude, what the hell is wrong with you? You know? Yeah. It happens, man. So. Yeah. Well, hey, let's go ahead and just wrap it up here and call it. I'm gonna go hang out with Kel. I'm gonna edit this and try to upload it tonight and hang out with Kel some before Father's Day's over. But again, happy Father's Day, and thanks for coming on the show and doing your thing.
I hope I think you gained some new knowledge about me that you didn't know before.
Oh yeah, that was the whole point, you know. I think, and for people that are listening, you know, talk to your parents and find out your family's history. Because, you know, I didn't really know too much about Grandpa and the stuff that he did in the Army or in the Air Force, well, Army and Air Force, you know. Yeah. So, like, when you showed me those pictures of him in, I think it was Okinawa, and they were labeled like 44, 45 or something like that, or whatever year it was. Yeah. And there was like pictures of the ice cream factory, you know, and stuff like that. I'm like, get out of here. Even back then, they got ice cream for them. It's just ridiculous. But, you know, like stuff like that, you know. It just kind of comes up. So I don't think we've ever sat down and actually just kind of talked about it. So now it's out there.
Yeah.
All right. Do you got any parting words?
Well, one of the things I was going to tell you, you know, when I first got off of active duty, one of the things I did was I enrolled in Indiana University at Kokomo. I never finished back then because I told you I wanted to do electrical engineering. But if I'd have graduated, I'd have had a degree from Purdue. But I moved later on. But so my probably the best thing I could probably say is if you have the GI Bill, use it because it's to your benefit. And, you know, there's a lot of veteran benefits that you're probably not even aware of that anybody can help you with. And
that's a huge draw for people to go to the VSOs, the different veteran service organizations like the VFW and the Legion and all that stuff. Yes. Is because that's like supposed to be the, you know, your source for information and guidance to filling out paperwork and things like that. I haven't personally visited one. I've been kind of hands off. I do the GI Bill, which you have to every semester, you know, get with the VA representative, sign that. But outside of that, I haven't gone to the hospital but one time for my initial checkup. I haven't requested. I haven't gone to any of the VSOs. I've considered going just to, you know, a new social group, network group, you know. So I might consider that, but. Yeah, GI Bill for sure, though. People, like, the only reason I'm able to do what I'm doing right now is because the GI Bill supports it. You know, not now, it's summertime.
Yeah, I understand.
It can't be your only source of income, but it's definitely a buffer that helps you do not only go to school, but maybe, you know, if you're in a situation like I am, I have that flexibility. Some people don't. But I have the flexibility where I can do something like this where it's not, you know, any income really up front. But I can still produce it because I'm getting some income still coming in, you know.
And the other thing I wanted to talk about real quick is if you're not a member of the American Legion or the VFW, become one because, you know, like my wife asked me one night, well, why do you go to the VFW? It's because it's a brotherhood. You know, there's still the military discipline and, you know, things happen there at meetings and things like that. And it's a community, you know. So if
Is
you're
it?
not a member of the VFW or the American Legion, then consider joining.
Yeah, I'm not a member of either, so I should do that. Are you? I was actually a member when I got back from Afghanistan in 2011. They made me a member in Lafayette. Like we went there and had the homecoming there, and they signed me up for a year for free. I think they said any new joins like that are free, especially if you're active duty.
Yeah.
But
It's
yeah,
all
I haven't been back to one. How strict is it? Like, if you sign up, like maybe you just want to go and hang out. Like I don't want to go to meetings. I don't want to be like
You don't have to go to the
leadership, blah blah
meetings.
blah. I just want a place to go hang out.
You don't have to go to any meetings. I haven't been to one in a while, but I still have a hat.
Yeah,
You know, so I mean, because I'm a member, it costs like $44, something like that a year to join. You get get the VFW magazine, and you know, the VFW magazine puts out a lot of information, like we were just talking about the benefits of being a veteran, and there's a lot of good information in those magazines.
do you
And as far
ever?
as the Legion, the Legion is just if you haven't been in a foreign war, but most veterans now have been in
Yeah,
country, in theater, in some type of theater.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, there's very minimal few that haven't.
yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah,
that's it's another community.
no, yeah, you're right. That's and I'd probably say it at least every other show about networking, how important it is. I know I talked about it in the last episode, but networking is so important. And the thing is that people that were in the military know people from all over the country and all aspects of life and stuff like that. Some of those people aren't doing anything. Some of those people you may have lost contact with or off the map, you know,
Yep.
and some people may be CEOs and multi-billionaires, you know, at some point. Like, there's no reason not to stay in contact, and you all help each other out. Like the military community helps each other out and stuff like that. And networking in a place like that is a place, I don't know. That's a good, I was talking to Michael Farrell about it the other day because he was saying how if he goes to a house, he's a plumber, you know, he's a service plumber. And he's saying when he goes to a house and it has like a Marine Corps flag, he's immediately like, cool, you know, and because it's like you click with that person, like, you know, this dude, you have shared experience that you can relate to, so you're immediately like, what's up, man, you know. And it's a lot more relaxed and like a friendly environment, you know. And it's cool for people that are veterans because you don't necessarily run into people that speak your language very often.
Yep.
So when you do, you're like, oh, what's up, dude, you know, like.
So I want to tell you one other thing, Justin. So here I am in town Stoughton, Wisconsin, about 12,000 people,
Some
15 miles
cheese.
south of Madison.
You get that
And
cheese
you know
there.
who the commander of my VFW is? A female Marine veteran.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Is that a good or a bad thing in your eyes?
I'm just letting you know that even in a small town like that, there's still a Marine in charge somewhere.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, go figure,
I'm just
right?
telling you that because, you know, you're
We're
a Marine
aggressive.
background.
Yeah,
And
you know,
just
there's
commander.
dudes, there's people that are, they carry, they carry that discipline out to their,
So
their
it's not
real
like,
life.
you know, it's not like, oh, yeah, let's go to the VFW and get drunk down there with a bunch of those old geezers. It's not like that anymore.
Yeah.
There's a lot of younger people that's taken leadership roles in the VFW and American Legion.
The biggest thing that keeps me away from it is like thinking that I'm going to go to a VFW and sit down and sit in a smoky bar. You know what I'm saying?
You're not allowed to smoke there anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you cannot smoke in any VFW anymore, I don't think.
Huh.
You can in this one anyway. You got to go outside here.
I'm in California, so I would assume that here you definitely cannot. But
Yeah.
back
I'm
home,
pretty
I know they could. Which, you know, whatever, man. You want to smoke, that's cool. But
Yeah,
there's
I
nothing
understand.
worse than coming home and smelling like cigarette smoke.
Yeah, I understand. So, you know, but I don't know about there, but I'm pretty sure it's probably the same. But you
Yeah.
should just check it out.
Yeah, I need to. All right,
But
man.
that's the thing I want to talk about, the VFW, the American Legion. Try to be part of that community, you know, because it can only help. It's not going to hurt anything.
For sure. For sure.
It can help you as an individual when you start realizing the information you're missing.
I have a few friends. Nate Garnes, who was on one of the earlier episodes, talks. He didn't. I don't think he talks about it on there, but I know he's active in the community. He posts stuff on Facebook about it and stuff like that. So that's good to see. You know, you definitely want younger blood in there to kind of bring some life to it and newer innovations or like events, style events that people would want to do.
Yeah.
I got to check it out. So I will at some point. I'll check it out. You can't do anything now. It's COVID right now. California just went back to wearing masks in public or something.
Yeah. So the other thing I was going to tell you, 28 years Army Reserve, and 36 years as a civil servant, Department of the Army.
Good times.
Yeah. So that's my background.
Yeah. Nah, I was done. I did my 12 and I was done. I considered doing government work when I got out, but it's just like, man, it's kind of done working for the man.
And ended up, after almost to the end of my career, I ended up getting 2 college degrees.
That's awesome.
So
I'm working on mine.
Pushing forward,
Yeah, this should be my last year, and I should get my bachelor's after this year. I'm taking 6 classes next semester.
Always have a goal. I don't care how old you are. Always have a goal.
Hopefully it doesn't affect the podcast, but 6 classes next semester for those listening.
But always have a goal, no matter what. I don't care if it's reachable or not. Have a goal.
100%. All right.
Good times.
Have a good night.
Thanks. You too, and thanks. I'll look for this episode to be
tomorrow. Cut. It should be up tomorrow.
All right, I'll talk to you.
Tell Nancy I said hi.
Will do. All right, see you.
Bye.
Bye.